Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hello again. Welcome back to Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. And today we're talking not quite books, but we'll get into it maybe, and writing, not quite writing, but we're talking about stuff and one good stuff, and that's baseball. And we're talking with Bill Jones. He's from Saskatoon, and he has a project that he's working on that's dear to his heart, dear and near, and it's all about baseball, but a specific kind of baseball project. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, Bill Jones, thanks for being with us here today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell us about yourself. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? That kind of stuff. A quick bio.
I was born in Minneapolis and moved to Winnipeg and grew up in Winnipeg. Came to Saskatoon came to Saskatchewan in 81. Started a radio job in Estevan. And then I moved to Saskatoon in 82 and worked for a local radio station here until 1995, where I started my own marketing company after that. And I still do radio on the community radio station. And it's nice to still have my foot in the door as far as radio goes. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, that's CFCR, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
As a matter of fact.
Yep. Well,
the two shows I do are Hot Buttered Soul,
yep,
which is on Tuesdays from noon to 1 our time.
Right.
And then Thursday, do the same thing.
Oh, the Hot Buttered Soul again on Thursday.
Yep.
Well, wifey person and I, you know Diane, we were on the board of directors about 12, 13 years ago for CFCR. And I used to do, both of us actually did the, swing shift Fridays from 4 to 6.
Oh, right on.
For a while, but that was about 06, 07. And I haven't really been in touch since then, but Ron Spizzeri, of course, and
of course I do. Everybody knows. Everybody knows Ron.
I haven't talked to him for a while. I should get him on the show and talk about his music collection. He still does that Night Dreams, I think.
Yeah, he does that, and he also does Hot Buttered Soul on Fridays.
Oh, on Fridays, right. And the reason we're talking about CFCR Radio, in case one of our thousands of listeners, you can get it online. It's just CFCR, the usual .com or .ca, something like that. So if you're interested, dear listener, check out CFCR Community Radio from Saskatoon. It's eclectic, to say the least, and it's a wonderful place. It's radio guys like Bill and I sort of grew up doing, if you don't mind me throwing that in there, Bill. So,
not at all.
Not at all. So, and I bet you we probably met before, but maybe not, because I was hanging around the station a lot in the early to mid part of this decade, or the '00s, I guess, but you never know. Anyway, you got into radio, ended up in Saskatoon, and you got your marketing company. Now, let's get to the project. What is your big current project?
We're doing a documentary film that's called They Came to Play the Game They Love, and it's concentrating on the friendly, rewarding confines for African Americans who came to play semi-pro baseball in Canada in the 1950s.
And what sparked your interest in this? Because this is a great idea, great project, but it's kind of a sort of an area that's not really been touched on. So how'd you stumble across this one?
Well, that Canada has always had outstanding history in sports. And this one here, my dad was one of hundreds of African Americans who came to Canada to play the game because of the situation in the U.S. at the time. I mean, Jackie Robinson did open the door for African Americans to go into the major leagues. However, the Negro leagues were starting to close down in the U.S., and so players were coming to Canada and Mexico to play semi-pro baseball, which worked for some, because then they went into the major leagues, and it was a very positive, for them. The respect they got in Canada, it was just a different world for the players.
And it's interesting to note that they would get that kind of reception up here because, like you said at the time, we used to say Negro players, black players in baseball. I remember Brooklyn Dodgers before they moved to Los Angeles. I still want them to go back to Brooklyn. So,
yeah.
But it's funny you should mention that. We're talking with Bill Jones. He's got a film project in the works called They Came to Play the Game They Loved. And I was talking to a cousin of mine while he's married to my cousin. He's in the Saskatchewan Baseball Hall of Fame. Name's Brian Lampett. And we were talking about that a while ago, and we remember, both of us, because we're about the same age, we would hang around our family farm near North Battleford, and we'd go to games in North Battleford with like the Beavers and Neilburg and different teams like that. Sure enough, that's what we mentioned was the number of players, Negro players, we'll say, if that's not a bad thing to say right now, that were on every team, 2 or 3 of them at least. And the baseball was fantastic ball because, you had limited major league teams. We didn't have minor league teams in the prairies that I knew of. So it was good baseball.
And the thing that, it was great baseball because the fans were coming out and watching the games. And as a matter of fact, we have some of those fans that experience those games that are going to be a part of the documentary, and they're going to share their experiences with them and talk about, the game itself and the thrill of the game, just being out there. It was really good competition. The positive note about this is not only the players that came here, but the Canadian players were very, very good. And the competition was amazing. And so the relationships that developed from this is just the positiveness is what we're sharing with everybody, because we have so many stories to share with with people, just to tell them about what happened in that time. And like you said, in the Saskatchewan Baseball Hall of Fame, a lot of the players are in there. They came from the United States, but they're also in the Baseball Negro League Hall of Fame as well. And that's something we're going to touch on as part of that with the contacts we have in the United States.
We have the Homestead Grays and the Kansas City Monarchs and teams like that. The New York Giants, what they call themselves, they had a tagline in the New York Negro Giants or something, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it was at that time. But the teams would come, from the U.S. to play in tournaments in Canada. And that was because the money was good for the winning team.
It was. I don't think they have that anymore, but they should.
Oh, I know, but they don't have it anymore. You're right. But, you go to Scepter, Saskatchewan to play. That tournament was packed every year. And teams came from all across the United States. And big winnings, in the thousands of dollars for the winning team. So it worked out well for everybody.
And I remember back then, because I grew up on the West Coast, my dad worked at the customs, the border crossing between Blaine and White Rock, BC, and then later on other jobs. But it was pretty much on par. In fact, the big scandal in the early 60s, I remember a cartoon when John Diefenbaker was the prime minister. I'm sort of off target, but it was the Diefenbuck, and he lowered the Canadian dollar to 93.5 US, and the whole country was shocked But
Yeah.
you're right. These guys could come up here, especially in the CFL. The money'd be the same. You get $7,000-8,000 a season for the New York Giants or Los Angeles Rams. You'd get $7,000 or $8,000 to play for the BC Lions or the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So why not?
Yeah, exactly. And
pretty much the same stuff.
That's one thing. The players that came up here, they would get anything from $180 to $800 a month, depending on their talent, and they would get paid. And the other thing is, they didn't have to worry about accommodations or even meals because they billeted with families. The families would take care of their meals and also do their laundry. And you wouldn't find that in the United States at that time. And
how did you get again interested in this? Because of your father? He came up and played a lot of games. Now, did you guys move?
Yeah.
Did you guys move to Canada because of that?
No, we didn't. My parents separated. Mom was from Brandon, and so they met while Dad was playing in baseball in Canada, and so they moved to Minneapolis. I was born there. My sister was born there, and the issue with that is there was a lot of negativity with black and white marrying at that time. And the pressure was high on both of them. And finally, my mother said, I got to go home, and took us back to Winnipeg. And that's where we grew up from there. And didn't keep in touch with him as much as I would have liked to. But then I did some research because I was looking for him and where he played as far as the game went, and then the research I came across was unbelievable, and been sitting up. And some of the things that are happening today in the world, I just decided it was time to put something positive on between the races in the world, like the two, white and black, getting together very simply and enjoying their time with each other. Again, we've got great stories to share, not only about the players playing here, but also the fans and how they appreciate it. And one of the positive things I put on this, and we concentrate on, is that, it's about baseball and it's about Negro players coming to Canada to play baseball. But you know what? It's also about Canada and the people of Canada, because they open their arms and let them come and play. And the games were just unbelievable from what some of the people I've talked to about what they enjoyed in that, and had a very good time. It was. We've got guys that used to. They would be farming, but if there was a game on, you know what? They'd take some time out, come in, watch the game, and have a nice evening watching baseball, and go back to farming.
Exactly. Yeah, I was like 11, 12 at the time when I'd come out to the prairies on the summertime, and then, all us cousins at the farm would run into town or something and watch ball games because it was great stuff. And we're talking, by the way, with Bill Jones. He's from Saskatoon. He's got a project underway. It's a documentary series. It's called They Came to Play the Game They Loved. It's about baseball. So how are you putting the funding together for this? This must be an enormous project.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're working on. We've got a GoFundMe page on right now that people can go to GoFundMe, and it's under They Came to Play the Game They Loved. And so we've got that going, and we also have some other things. I've approached many businesses to get involved, and now what I'm doing is I'm done my research on African American businesses and people in the States that really push, we're all one, and let's, treat each other that way. I want to approach them with this and say, listen, from the 1950s, we have something that shows you how they were all one, and the respect that the players received when they came to Canada to play the game.
Have you been in touch with the players from that era?
Yeah, I've got a gentleman in Reno, Nevada, Gary Fink, and he's working on setting those up. He's trying to find the players if they're still around. Phil Dixon, who has written 6 Negro League books, is working with me as well to try and find. But one of the things that we lucked out about is that we got family members from the players that know all about Canada and how their relative was excited about coming here to play baseball in the summertime.
Now, when these players came up was it mainly on the prairies or was it all over?
Well, it started to be all over, and then as times changed, I mean, at one time, remember Edmonton Eskimos now, the football team, but they were also Edmonton Eskimos in the baseball team back then. And then we had teams from across the country that were doing the same thing. But most of the positive stuff comes out of Western Canada, especially Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. And there's so much history that really hasn't been talked about.
And so how do you do the research for They Came to Play the Game They Loved, a 9-part documentary that Bill Jones is putting together? Do you just one phone call leads to another, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's many contacts. We came across Phil Dixon from a gentleman in Saskatchewan that told us about him. And then I came across another gentleman in the Bronx, Queens, New York. He's a writer out there, and he did a story on it. So then he passed me on to a professor at the University. Now I forget. I'm having blogs here, but we got the professor that is a history professor, and she knows a lot about the Negro Leagues, and she talks about how the players, once the Negro League started to shut down, then the players would come to Canada to play. And her name is Leslie Heffy, and she's the professor from Kent State Research University in Ohio. And that came across as a positive, and she's ready to roll with us whenever we're ready to go. And we're ready. Like, I've got a lot of things lined up right now, and as you said, the funding is the main thing that's kind of holding us back. But I mean, my music that we're working on is amazing because I've got a saxophone player out of Saskatoon, Gregory Edmonds. He's done 4 songs for me with that 50 sound already. And then Jay Semko, also from Saskatoon and the Northern Pikes, is working with me and putting different things together that way as well. So, like I told Tony Testego of the Mega Entertainment, who I'm working with, and told Tony, I said, look, you know what, we'll continue to push to get the funds, but I want to get as much in here as I possibly can, so when we approach the broadcasters, we're ready to go, and we have everything in order that, I just want to make sure that everything's done right, and that we really take a good look at what we're putting together and make sure it's put together right.
Now, how do you find archival footage? Do you have any access to home movies or TV video clips, film clips from back then showing some of the games?
What we have is newspaper clippings, of course, and then we have a lot of pictures of the different players and stuff like that. What we're hoping to get is clips from the Negro League museum so that we can share some of that stuff for that. We don't have a lot of film clips from Canada at that time, but we do have a lot of player testimonials, which we will use other voices for. and say the player's name afterwards. We also have, we've got information from our historians and also from the fans, like yourself, that are working with us to tell their stories and how much they enjoyed it. And that's right across the country that we have. We have a gentleman in Quebec, and he is basically telling us about the Montreal Royals, who Jackie Robinson really made famous. However, there are other Negro players that played in that, and that's what he's going to share with us and just show how they came to Canada, played on the Royals team, and then went back into the major leagues after that.
I think Roy Campanella might have played with the Royals.
That's right.
And
you got that right.
But Tommy Lasorda, I don't know if Duke Snyder did, he might have, but a lot of those guys coming up, because that was a Dodgers AAA team, so a lot of their top talent got funneled through Montreal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I envision, not to put words in your mouth, I envision something like along lines of a Ken Burns documentary where you'll have lots of still photos with voiceovers, and then as many on-camera interviews as you can find, and then hopefully some archival footage you're going to put in there as well. Is that sort of the vision that you have in mind?
Yeah, I've studied Ken Burns' work and studied it very well, especially the Civil War. And that one didn't have any footage in it, but a lot of pictures and a lot of stories.
Exactly.
And there were gentlemen writing letters back to loved ones and telling them what was going on and those kinds of things. So, and with Ken Burns, one of the things he's got is great music background, fantastic pictures, great historians, and that's basically what I'm lining up for this opportunity.
This is great. And of course, Ken Burns has access to Peter Coyote for his narration, which is not a bad choice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And one of the things we're concentrating on when the players that played here and we're doing their testimonials, we've got contacts. Gary Fink and others are lining up contacts with African American people to read these stories for us. So it gives us that nice touch that we require for it. And it's good working with Gary. Gary's been amazing because he's done, worked on statistics of all players that have played baseball in Canada, and he's got some great stuff.
Wow.
And a lot of his stuff is on the Western Canadian baseball website that J. Del Ma put together. And also, Mr. Sherry's from Lloydminster. Maybe Jane Sherry is his wife, but he passed away in the early 2000, I believe, because it was 2003 that I discovered where my father had played. And I talked to, I believe his name's Dan Sherry, and I talked to him, and we just started talking about baseball, and this is where it all started back in 2003, just waiting for the right time to get it out there.
Exactly. We're talking with Bill Jones. He's from Saskatoon. He's working on a project. It's going to be a documentary called They Came to Play the Game They Loved, about African-American baseball players coming up to Canada, mainly in the prairies, mainly in the 50s, maybe early 60s. But Bill Jones, back when you were growing up or even during your lifetime, you got any favorite baseball books that you've read?
Yeah, there's quite a few, as a matter of fact. Kirby Puckett, well, that was later on in time. But I was a diehard Twins fan, so Tony Oliva, Rod Carew, Harmon Killebrew, anything about those guys and stuff. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Ferguson Jenkins this past summer, and we talked about that. Being Canada's most outstanding pitcher of all time,
right,
and winning the Cy Young Award. And we talked about some of his experiences when he went down to the minor leagues, when Philadelphia signed him out of high school and then sent him down to the minor leagues. So he shared some of those things with us that we want to share, and we've got his permission to do that, to share in the documentary so that the viewer can get an idea of why the players came north to play the game.
Right, and the Twins, they used to be the Washington Senators, right?
Yeah. And then it was growing up. I mean, you knew the Twin players, and you know, today I'm not following him as much as I used to, but just before, I knew everybody, and Jim Perry was pitching for him, and you know, I just knew what Carew did every year, and Killebrew hitting balls out of the park and stuff like that. It was just a great, for a kid, it's growing up, it was beautiful. And when the Montreal Expos came into the major leagues, they had the Winnipeg Whips playing out of Winnipeg. That was good. And we got to go there and watch games as you know, and they were a part of the community as well. So, you know, there's so many positives that come out of that. Carmen, Manitoba, I'll give you this. They were the first community to put up lights on their baseball diamond. And we'll share that and talk to them about that and stuff. So
this is what I like to do as well. Is like I do a thing on LTD radio about today in Canadian history, and I'll get into a newspaper from 1936, and I'll get lost for hours going through there trying to find one little item that might fit. But it's just fantastic, the stuff you can dig up from days gone by that we think don't mean anything, but at the time, it was a big deal. Yeah, my favorite baseball books, I guess I got two of them. The Boys of Summer, of course, was good. And Ball 4, Jim Boughton, when he came out with that one in the early 70s, which, of course, was completely shocking and different. What? You mean baseball players actually, like, chew tobacco or drink beer or fool around on the side? What? I'm shocked.
Oh,
I tell you, shocked.
And the stories, like, we're not going to go that far, but we do have some things that we will touch on about that. But again, the majority of it is very positive, and the players did receive a lot of respect, and at times it was overwhelming.
We're talking with Bill Jones about his documentary project. They came to play the game they loved. Bill, a couple of weeks ago, some Facebook friends of mine, and people I actually know, not just through Facebook, started clicking on lists of our favorite baseball movies. So I'm sure you have a couple of those in mind.
Yeah, I'm trying to think right off the bat. Well, you know, one of my favorites is the Lou Gehrig story. Mm-hmm. Now we're going back in time. Gary Cooper played Lou Gehrig.
That's Pride of the Yankees, right?
Yeah, that's right. And anytime that's on, and usually it's on TCM, but anytime it's on, I watch it over and over again. And I just, you know, it's such an amazing story that, you know, this gentleman was different from other ball players at that time. I mean, you know, Babe Ruth liked to party, and so did the other guys and stuff like that. But this guy, Lou Gehrig, played baseball, you know, and that's what he concentrated on. You know, when he married his wife, and she was so important to him, and family was important to Lou. And so that's one of the things that I'm really impressed about when I watch that film.
That's right, and it's at the end when he says, today, I feel like the luckiest man in the world. When it's being echoed through Yankee Stadium on his sign-off day. Bill Jones, been a pleasure talking to you. They came to play the game they loved, a big documentary film project Bill has in mind. Once again, Bill, how can we help with this project?
If you don't mind, I'd like people to go and check out our GoFundMe page. You put GoFundMe in there for search, and then they came to play the game they love. It'll give you a complete rundown of what we are doing as far as the documentary film is. And it also shows you an interview I did on CTV in January talking about the game as well. So if you could go, your listeners could take a look at that, see what they think, and any type of donation you can make towards the development of the documentary would be greatly appreciated.
Now, do you have any end date in mind, or is it too early for that?
No. Right now, my goal is to have it ready to go by 2022 in time for Black History Month in February that year.
Super. This is Bill Jones. He's here on Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, and we're talking about books and writing and movies about baseball and the project. They came to play the game they loved. If you can support him in any way, please do. Bill, a pleasure. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Dennis. And this is just great stuff. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to share this with you and to take the time to talk about your experiences that you had enjoying the game of baseball back when you were growing up.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.